we're going to take notes on section 2 of chapter 8, Perimeter of Composite Figures. So go ahead and write down the title. You don't need to draw the picture, but we will be able to figure out the perimeter of those shapes. So if you need to pause the video, and remember, if you have a question, write that down in your notebook so that we can go over that tomorrow during our Zoom lesson. Okay, so what are composite figures? So you're writing this down in your notebook. Composite figures are figures made up of triangles, squares, rectangles, semicircles, and other two-dimensional figures. And the perimeter is the distance around that figure. So again, you don't need to draw the picture, but write down the words. If you need to pause the video, pause the video. So you don't need to write this down. I don't want you to. But if we wanted to get the perimeter of this composite figure, we could figure out the perimeter of the triangle. We could get this length, this length, this length. We could figure out the circumference of the circle. We could figure out all the lengths all the way around to get the perimeter of our composite. We're not going to do anything this crazy. That's just to give you an idea. Okay, so please write this in your notebook. Hopefully you have some graph paper. So we're going to estimate the perimeter using grid paper. If you don't have graph paper, that's fine. But we can estimate the perimeter by looking at the amount of squares that our shape takes up. So we're going to estimate the perimeter. So first, again, remember, you're writing this all down in your notebook so that you have steps to follow when you get lost. So first we want to count the number of full squares around the figure. So we're going to write this down and then we're going to go over it together. Then we're going to count the number of squares around the diagonal. So remember, those would be half. And we're going to estimate the length of the diagonal to be, 1.5 because it's actually longer. And we're going to calculate the whole length around. Okay, so let's try this. So let's follow the steps. First, we're going to count the number of full squares. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Don't forget those side ones. So I have 12. And again, you're going to show me the math. Don't just calculate it in your head. And then so those are our full squares. Plus we're going to do 1.5 times our diagonals. Let's make the diagonals a different color. So diagonals, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 1.5 times 8. So we're just going to do the math. So now we have 12 plus 1 times 8 is 8, plus half of 8 is 4, so 12. So if I estimate the perimeter of my double triangle, it's going to be 24 squares. So again, write this down in your notebook. If you need to pause the video, pause the video. If you have questions, go ahead and write those down on the side so you can ask those tomorrow during our Zoom lesson. Okay, so now you're going to do some on your own. If you actually want to do the tick marks like I do, you can go to page 326 in your textbook and you can write in your textbook because it is yours. So I want you to estimate the perimeter using the grids that were given. So you should see a text box on the right for your answers. So go ahead and put those in the text box on the right. All right, so check your answers with my answers. If yours are way different than mine, you need to ask questions. So just so you know, I look at your answers in Edpuzzle, and when they're way off, but you don't ask questions, I wonder, right? You know what the answer is. You know what you have. So we need to start asking questions. Okay, so now I have other odd-shaped objects. So I want to find the perimeter of my square and my semicircle. Okay, so again, you're writing this down in your notebook. I also need you to draw the picture so that you have that as a reference. So pause the video if you need to pause the video. Okay, so first I want to know, what is the circumference of my semicircle? Well, if I look at the bottom, I know that the diameter of that semicircle is 5, and I know my formula, circumference equals 1/2 pi d, okay? Because it's a semicircle, it's not a full circle, I'm using 1/2. Okay, so if I plug all those lovely numbers in, and you can use your calculator, so yes, please use your calculator, I get 7.85 for my semicircle. In my square, I'm just going to add up my 3 sides, because there's only 3 sides to that square because it's got the semicircle on the top. So that's 15, and then my total, I'm going to add those 2 together. Again, it's okay to use your calculator. So we have 22.85. Make sure you have units, Sammy. A lot of you aren't putting units on your answers, and you're going to lose points. Okay, so, if this all continues, we're going to start doing quizzes and tests online, so you have to be ready for those. Again, if you need to pause the video to write this all down, pause the video, and then when you're ready to move on, move on. So just kind of a reminder, this is how I figured out the circumference of my semicircle. So it's a half of a circle, so it's half pi d. Here's my d. And then to get the perimeter of my square, I just have 3 sides to my square. Each side is 5, so that's why I added them all together. So if I take the perimeter of the square and the perimeter of the semicircle, I get 22.85, and my units are meters. Again, if you have a question, write that down on the side. If you need to pause the video, pause the video. Okay, you're going to do some on your own. So you need to copy these down into your notebook so that you have it as a reference. Make sure you put it down into little bits and pieces. Please note just answers. We're doing math. We're not just doing mental math. I need to see what you're doing so that if something goes wrong, it goes wrong. We can figure out what we did. Okay? Put your answers on the text box on the right. Please don't forget units. Okay, so check your answer with my answer. Again, if your answer isn't what my answer is and it's way off, then you need to ask questions or figure out where you went wrong. Okay, so make sure you're asking questions, writing down notes on the side of your notebook. If you need to pause the video, pause the video. And that's it for this lesson. We'll do some practice tomorrow.